never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today is a really cool day for an interview because I've got Molly Zemek with me. Molly is a professional chef, a sommelier, a woman who has lived and breathed the beautiful combinations of food and alcohol and all those things that make us go, oh, yes, please. The problem, of course, is, oh, yes, please. That is rather an emotional relationship that many of us have. And I certainly, I'm an emotional overeater, guilty as charged, and don't even start with the alcohol. And I guess Molly has got her own journey. And indeed, she's actually this year coming out with a book to helping those people of us who are still struggling with our relationship with food to maybe bring that to a new level. So I can't wait to dig in, literally. Molly, welcome to my show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Excited for this conversation.
Isn't it? Oh, I mean, here you are, a professional chef. So was there always this fascination with food from an early age? Did you basically grow up in a household where food was celebrated?
Absolutely. So my father is Italian, and from as early as I can remember, food was the main focus. I learned early on that food is love, that food is something that we care about, that food is something that we celebrate, that we make time for, that we focus a lot of time and energy on. So I consider myself a lifelong food lover.
Ah, beautiful. And I mean, did your dad actually love cooking, or did he just love that your mom was in the kitchen?
He loved food. My mother was and is the cook. And so he very much benefited from her ability and talent in the
Right,
kitchen and her
right.
willingness to really source out the best ingredients
Mm,
possible. And
yeah.
so it was a mutual love of food, but my mom always did most of the cooking.
Oh, cool. And she handed that skill or some of these skills down to you?
I certainly learned by watching her, although she was very protective of the kitchen as a space that was her domain. And it wasn't until I went to culinary school that I had enough credibility that I could spend some time in the kitchen on my own and start experimenting. But my mother was never really a baker, and I love desserts. So I
Oh,
would get into the kitchen to make some sweet things, and that was often what I had the opportunity to do when I was younger.
oh, beautiful. So there was always this beautiful food love affair. And it's interesting that you point to the sweets, that was your niche, because obviously the sugar is something that in our history, when we go back 10,000s of years, yes,
Mhm.
you're lucky when you find a few berries and honey. Yeah, this is something sweet. This is not something that we're used to. So therefore, it was always cherished when you look at it from a very long time ago. Nowadays, of course, it
Yes.
is bloody everywhere. And our food access has completely changed. What did
Yes.
food do to you? Did you get a dopamine rush when you had your beautiful tiramisu or your whatever you choose to create?
Well, food played so many different roles. I mean, food was first and foremost a sense of pleasure.
Mm,
I mean, just that instant, like you said, dopamine hit that I didn't have the words for as a child,
mm,
but I knew that if somebody was putting delicious food in front of me, then that meant that they loved me. So
oh,
I made the connection between food and love, food and nurturing, and food and pleasure. And as I developed my interest in eating and had the opportunity to try a wide variety of foods, what I recognized is that food could be even better depending on the type of restaurant that you went to, depending on the quality of the
yeah.
ingredient. And so it became a almost a search for experiencing the most pleasure I possibly could through eating. And that's what eventually led me to culinary school, was just a
Yeah.
desire to really satisfy this just growing appetite for delicious food.
Yeah. How beautiful is that? And I mean, I tried to find something negative about that, but there is nothing negative about that. We are cherishing the beautiful combination of certain ingredients, of certain tastes, of certain. I get goosebumps just talking about that, and that actually shows the emotional response that is there for me. For crying out loud, there is. So I was I guess brought up the same way, and I actually cultivated that same passion. And for me, always as a host, my tables are laden with everything, you name it, and it's there, and that
Hmm.
is. I mean, okay, go big back in my own history. Poorer background. There were German world wars, basically. Germany has caused them, and we ended up paying the price for it. And I come from quite poorer circumstances. So
Hmm.
a day out, or sorry, shall I say, a meal out was chips from the fish and chip shop without the fish,
Hmm.
just chips.
Hmm.
So of course, when you then make some money and actually go there, there is this societal, this social kind of aspect of, okay, have a look, I can actually afford that, and I can afford to be a host. I mean,
Yes.
is that still a common drive, or was that more or less peculiar to me? What do you feel when you sort of speak to your clients, to your people that you meet? What is sort of the driving force or the driving forces for those people to love food and probably overindulge food?
Well, I think because food plays so many different roles
Mm,
beyond just physically nourishing
mm,
us,
mm,
right? Beyond just simply satisfying pure hunger,
mm,
that it depends on the person. It
mm,
it it can be a way to connect, right?
mm,
I was talking about food as love, and so for some of us,
mm,
eating and overindulging is the way that we connect with people. It's our shared interests,
mm,
right? And food can easily be an escape, right? Because food creates that instant pleasure
mm,
when we're experiencing stress, or we need some relief, or we need a reprieve. Food and alcohol too are such a convenient way to just create that, although it doesn't really solve the underlying stress, and a lot of times it compounds it. But those are some of the reasons, right? Wanting to connect, wanting to escape. Food is
mm,
also a sense of security. If you're somebody who grows up in a situation where food is scarce and
mm,
you never know if there's enough food, then having abundant food, or being able to eat a lot, or
mm,
being able to
mm,
clean your plate, can
mm,
create a false sense of safety.
mm,
So it's really unique to your particular
mm,
relationship with food. And that's
mm,
a lot of what I help people figure out is,
mm,
if you're eating beyond the point that satisfies you in a way that allows your body to feel its best, and emotionally you feel your best, then we have to figure out, what are you trying to solve with eating? Because
mm.
if you're not truly hungry at that point, then food is not the answer, right? If hunger is not the problem, food
Yeah.
is not the solution. So what are you trying to solve that food was never meant to solve for you?
Ooh, nicely said, nicely said. But I guess many of these points that I've highlighted and you have highlighted, they
Mhm.
are going back to our early childhood and the way we are being brought up. And that the way we were brought up is, of course, because of the experiences of our parents and grandparents. For
Yes.
me, I was forced to eat every single last morsel on the plate
Hmm. Hmm.
because it was, for my grandparents, food was such a scarce resource, especially in after war years. So
Right.
it is you get that drummed into you, and therefore certain core beliefs are laid down much earlier than you even think or than you even have this kind of relationship or you begin to have this conscious relationship with food.
Absolutely.
Mm,
And ultimately, what brings us back to consciousness is what our bodies tell us.
mm,
So, a lot of the people who come to me for help have realized, you know what, my current habit of eating or drinking is just not making me feel good anymore.
mm,
There are negative side effects to it.
mm,
This idea that it's going to make me feel better, it's going to make me feel safer, which
mm,
oftentimes we're not aware of, or it will help me connect more to people that I love, or it will give me a reprieve and an escape aren't really true. But
mm,
I need to unlearn some of these beliefs
mm,
that there's not enough food or that more is better.
mm,
And the awareness eventually comes from our bodies speaking up and saying, hey, like this doesn't feel good anymore. Something needs to change. And then starting to peel back the layers to this
mm.
relationship with food,
Yeah.
which takes some time to figure out.
Mm. You're quite right. But there's something else is happening at the moment, isn't it? Because about 10 years ago, if you look at all the states of the United States, there was not a state where the incidence of obesity was above, I think, 31 or something like that percent. And now, just 10 years later, the average of all the states in the United States is 41% of
Mhm.
obesity. And the hallmarks or the boundaries have not changed. So what
Mhm.
has happened in the last 10 years that
Mhm.
there is such an explosion of clinical obesity, certainly in the United States?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the way that food is manufactured. And I mean, there are many issues
Mm,
below the surface. There's a lot of complexity to this, but a lot of it has to do with processed food,
mm,
right? And the intense dopamine reward that we get in our
mm,
brains when we eat manufactured food that our
mm,
bodies were never meant to digest, right? Concentrated sugar,
mm,
alcohol,
mm,
processed
mm,
wheat, things that give us almost just a more intense sense of pleasure that are very easy to overeat, that also don't physically satisfy us but
mm,
can create a false sense of hunger.
mm,
And then we can develop things like insulin resistance, which makes it even harder for us to digest food. So I don't want to just
mm,
generalize here, because depending on the individual case, somebody could be dealing with obesity for one reason, another person the
mm,
next. But there are a lot of issues at play here.
mm.
But when what it boils down to is that many of us as consumers are not even aware that this is the way that our brains are chemically reacting to some of these man-made foods.
Absolutely.
And instead of having that awareness and realization, we instead think that somehow it's a personal fault and that we just don't have enough self-control and we just need more discipline. And that only compounds the problem, because then we feel bad about
Absolutely.
ourselves, and then all we want
Absolutely.
to do is go back to food to feel better.
Absolutely.
So
That's a
it's not an easy situation to be in,
absolutely.
and it's no wonder that so many people, especially now, are resorting to quick fix tactics as a way to try and solve the problem, which
Mm,
in my opinion can't be solved through some sort of magic bullet, because you're not really addressing the underlying reasons
mm.
why you're eating more. And some of those reasons have to do with the kind of food that you're eating
Absolutely.
that create this compulsive,
Absolutely.
insatiable appetite.
And let's explore that just a little bit, because most
Mhm.
people have zero clue
Right.
that there are companies there who spend tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of creating just the perfect bliss point. The bliss point is
Hmm.
just the right magic between sugar, salt, and fat. And that's the reason that you can't eat just one chip. Okay. One.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So here you are. People are perfecting that. People making nearly crack cocaine in a little edible version for you. And now you're surprised that you think, wow, this is gorgeous. I love it. And then, of course, people turn around like the alcohol industry. It's not our problem that we have got here crack cocaine that you can eat. No, 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 no. Drink responsibly or eat responsibly. Fuck off. So,
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, what other tricks are there or why does the food industry, no, let's say, which tricks does the food industry have up their sleeves to make food more addictive? Let's call it what it is.
Hmm. Um, well, I mean, there's many, right? It is it starts with taking a substance like sugar, refining it and making it even more palatable, and and things like high fructose corn syrup. And then finding ways to incorporate that ingredient into
Mm,
foods where it has no business playing a role in sort of the makeup of the food,
mm,
but little sneaky ways like that, but also through advertising. I mean,
mm,
right?
mm.
It's we receive messages that it's normal to sit in front of the TV with a huge bag of chips and just like mindlessly eat. And so there's so many
Yep, yep.
you know sneaky ways that this happens, but I don't want your listeners to underestimate their own ability to know the truth, because
Oh,
at
yeah.
the end of the day, if your body is telling you I don't feel good, like something's off, I'm
Mm,
noticing like I have no energy, I'm having a hard time sleeping, emotionally I feel worse, your
mm,
body always keeps the score. And so, no matter what tricks are being played in the food industry,
mm,
you know the truth about your lived experience, but you need to start kind of paying attention. And it's your responsibility to really listen to that, right?
mm,
And no two people are affected the same way by the same
mm,
thing. And so,
mm,
if your unique experience is that, like, ooh, like I don't feel that great when I eat a bag of, let's say, Doritos, or when I'm like, eating a tub of ice cream.
mm.
I don't know that I really love this as much as I thought I did, because my
Right.
body's telling me it doesn't feel that great. So there's a disconnect between these thoughts that my brain is
Mm,
offering and what my body's saying. And when
mm.
you begin to just listen more to your body, you can begin to lessen your desire for the food, but you have to start listening to what your body's telling you.
Touche, touche. But the problem, of course, is we are running around like mad, crazy folks, constantly nose to the grindstone. I need to make money. I need to be up to date on my social media. I need to do this, it is. We don't
Mhm.
stop. We don't stop to listen to
Mhm.
our bodies, neither not stop to feel our emotions. We are just going, 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 going. And then, of course, you're
Mhm.
tired. And, well, if you've just been going 12 hours, working your guts out, well, the cheesecake is more tempting than the salad. I can assure you
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this is we are sometimes actually quite strong contributor to the problems that we create the problems to a certain degree by our lifestyle.
And
My
and I think the other trap that is out there that we often fall into when we find ourselves in these cycles of just mindless eating and mindless drinking is that we believe that the solution is to just go on another diet or to do dry January and do a detox, thinking that must be the answer and that's how we can offset what we're doing.
no,
But the thing is that those approaches end up, setting us up to fail again. So that we're not actually listening to our body when we follow an approach like that. We're just following somebody else's rules for what we should eat or not eat, or what we should drink or not drink.
love
And
it,
so it takes us away from our bodies and it keeps us focused on the food.
love
And
it.
then we feel even more frustrated when those plans like don't really get to the heart of why we're, unwinding with food and alcohol at the end of the day. And like, how do we actually address the deeper needs? Because
Mm,
those diets don't really talk about that. So
does not.
I think many people out there are just confused about, well, what's really the solution, because they're
Mm,
just not familiar with other options.
indeed. And I mean, we've forgotten the real relationships with food, the way how we create nourishing, healthy food that's easy to be done. There are many, many, many young people nowadays who don't know how to cook. Certainly
Mhm.
in the lower socioeconomic strata of parts of the society. My goodness, there are certainly in the UK, there are whole generations of people who only eat takeaways.
Hmm.
So a lot of skills have become lost. Is there, I mean, what about the schools in the United States? Are there cooking lessons?
Oh, so, I mean, certainly in the United States, there are just so many options to just have food conveniently delivered to
Mm.
your door, to have alcohol show up at your doorstep. And
True.
there have never been, this many ways to distract ourselves
Oh,
in history, as far as, I'm aware of. But and just this whole culture of convenience
yeah, yeah.
really makes it easy to just completely check out and be disconnected from our bodies, be disconnected from
Mm,
relationships.
mm,
Um,
mm,
but I think that what a lot of people realize, just to continue to really give people credit here, is that it's not satisfying when you do that consistently over time, right? There is something that's lost, and
mm,
and there isn't, I think, always like a true sense of well-being when you're socially disconnected, or when you're not being
mm,
creative, whether that's cooking or whether
mm,
that's doing something else creative, that
mm,
we generally feel less fulfilled when
mm,
we're engaging in kind of mindless distractions all of the time. And I think that it pays a
mm,
price. I think that we will work through this, and I think that people are, I think, coming back to cooking, coming
mm,
back to being more creative.
mm,
But you're right. I mean, especially now, I mean, in the US, it's just never been easier to
mm,
to stay distracted, to keep
mm,
things convenient,
mm,
and then, pay the price
mm,
physically for it.
mm. So maybe the current economic downturn is a little bit of has a silver lining, because people will probably not have as much money, and they suddenly learn that, hey, if I don't need to pay $6 for some small glass of tomato sauce or whatever pasta sauce, which I can
Mhm.
create probably for $1 or less. Um, in a far tastier and healthier version myself at home. So maybe that economic forces will bring us back to some degree of sanity and balance between convenience and actually going out there being creative. I love the way that you described that, because that's the joy that I get out of cooking, to
Mhm.
actually create something and think, wow, that tastes gorgeous. Oh, I have done that. It's that kind of ooh, ooh. It's that kind of
Mhm.
win, uh, taking action and then celebrating the little win. And that is cool. I like that.
Yeah, and I think that when people go through this journey of reconnecting with their bodies,
Mm,
understanding what they physically need, and then ultimately eating less in response and also drinking less,
mm,
then what they're left with is this opportunity to find new ways to have fun, new ways to relax. And so
mm.
sometimes people find themselves back in the kitchen because they're looking for a way to enjoy themselves and have fun.
Uh,
And you can cook and enjoy the process and have fun without overeating.
Trisha.
And so it's like, oh, how can I return to a sense of fun? And for, many people, that's actually finding new ways to be creative. But when we're distracted by eating, and we're distracted by drinking, or we're distracted by any number of other things like our phones or any of these other convenient distractions, we're not very creative about finding ways to have fun,
So
right?
true.
We're not. Yeah. So I think that is part of the beautiful process
Mm,
of changing your
mm,
relationship with food, healing your relationship, so that you
mm,
can
mm,
have a deeper sense of your needs and reconnect with yourself, and
mm,
learn how to address some of those basic needs of wanting to have fun, wanting to connect,
mm,
wanting a sense of safety, wanting to relax, but without using food or alcohol as a way to do
mm,
it.
mhm. And we can do that in so many ways, um, even as a bonding amongst men. It
Mm.
is, if you think about it, yes, a barbecue is of course quite nice, but you can start earlier than that. You can actually start by getting some meat together. If you have some hunters close by, get some venison, get some pork to get the fat in there, and start creating your own sausages, start creating your own patties. It's good fun. I mean, it talk manly things here. And you know
Yes.
exactly what is in there because you have created it. So there's not
Uh-huh.
sawdust, claws, and beaks in there. Okay. So it's just lovely. So you can do so many things. And actually, once you have done one thing and realized, "Oh, that's actually not difficult. Even you make your own pasta. I mean,
Yeah.
what easier food there is there to create than make your own pasta? And it's just,
Mhm.
although you could argue, okay, it's a gluten in there, etc. But if you think about it, for those of you who have no idea why we think about this homemade food and why we appreciate it so much, there are beautiful videos on the internet where doctors have given cameras, little cameras, they come in like a capsule form, and you eat them with food. So basically, you
Mhm.
swallow that camera, and then the camera takes pictures over time, basically throughout the gut, and you see what happens to the food that you eat. And there was a beautiful thing between store-bought pasta and homemade pasta. And you sort of see the parallel, sort of the camera pictures. And after, 2 minutes, the homemade pasta is completely dissolved. It's basically like they're
Mhm.
all gone. The other pasta is still there. 20 minutes later, down there, still there, recognizable as pasta. You might as well eat cardboard. That's probably more nutritious. So there is so much there that we can actually help ourselves. And I think that's where you're pointing your clients to, that
Mhm.
we are not helpless victims, but we have got
Mhm.
an incredible power in our hands, so literally, when it comes to the kitchen. That's fantastic. You also mentioned the word healing. Um,
Mhm.
I think there is the aspect of healing from emotional overeating, but there's also
Mhm.
healing your gut, and that's what food
Yes.
does. That's what food does. I mean, how can you give us examples where you can change people dramatically with the help of food?
Oh, 100%. I think that when you just begin listening to that inner wisdom of your body, what your body is saying in response to certain foods that you eat, your body knows what it
Mm.
needs to feel good. It's just that the voice of in the language of your body is very subtle. It's very soft
Uh,
spoken. And you need to take the opportunity to just listen deeply. But when you do, you'll notice, oh, when I eat this particular food, I feel good. I feel
mm,
calm. I feel nourished. I actually have a lot of energy. But when I eat this particular food, oh, there's just like gurgling and like maybe there's some acid reflux. Like I
mm,
don't know, like I'm
mm,
not actually having a lot of energy. In fact, I'm hungry an hour later.
mm,
So there is so much insight that your body has when you start paying attention to the way food makes you feel. It also just begins at a very basic level, at just first asking yourself, "Am I hungry?"
mm,
If you're not hungry, it's not time to eat. And then when you begin to satisfy the hunger, the next question is, "Have I had enough?" Not waiting until I'm stuffed and I'm full and there's that discomfort, but like my body feels calm, it
mm,
feels satisfied, it
mm,
feels fine. And then are there any other nuances that I'm hearing of just like I feel really good, like
mm,
I feel so energetic, I feel so positive, or I'm not feeling that great. I have some digestive issues. So that I think is just some. I mean, I'm going to say simple, although it's not simple for
mm,
many of us who have never done this work before. But that is a
yeah,
simple way you can begin to just heal
mm,
your digestion is just by listening to what your body's already telling you and experimenting with different kinds of foods.
mm, mm,
And some of the foods that we're taught are like the good foods, the superfoods, don't always agree with people, right? Some people don't respond favorably to kale,
yeah,
right? Other people do. And so be
yep,
willing to just to be curious about your unique experience with food.
mm,
And then emotionally, there's this beautiful opportunity when we're eating just enough to satisfy our hunger and we're no longer hungry. And food is not an option at that point because we've decided just to honor what our bodies are telling us and eating when we're hungry. There's a whole platter of emotions there in front of us that we get to consider. And that's how you heal yourself emotionally, is by just allowing those feelings to be there and getting to know yourself and really
Beautiful.
understanding, what do I value? What do these life experiences mean to me? How can I understand what matters based on these emotions that I'm dealing with right now? And how can I really honor myself and really just making space for these emotions instead of just shoving them down with food? And that can be a very healing process. Yeah, a very just a healing process for so many people to learn how to process emotions that way and have the resiliency in doing that so that they don't need to turn to food as a coping mechanism.
Wow. I love it. A platter of emotions. In actual fact, I would say there's a smorgasbord out there, but most of us we are not even accepting the simple ones. And most of us, unless you do the work for one reason or the other, we are not accepting that emotions, also negative emotions, are part and parcel of life. These are waves of
Yes.
neurochemicals that are washing over us, and we
Hmm.
don't. We feel guilt and shame that I suddenly feel a bit tired and down because now,
Hmm.
because according to advertisements, I should be bouncing around with super energy, and if I don't have it, I better have a Coke, which makes me so much more attractive to the opposite kind of sex. And you just think,
Yes.
oh, for crying out loud. But it's the
Right.
subconscious conditioning that we have been uh, that we have undergone for the last, oh, however long you live, really.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Unbelievable.
Hmm.
And
And we're many of us were raised in families where, our parents weren't taught how to even identify their feelings, and they
mm,
discouraged any kind of emotional expression. So
mm,
it's not your fault that you don't really have any language for your emotions, or
nice,
that you feel afraid
nice.
to talk about how you feel. But it really is the key to developing mindful eating and drinking
Mm,
habits, in my opinion, because
mm,
emotions are what drive everything, right?
mm,
Even if you don't consider yourself an emotional eater, if you're eating more than what your body needs, it's for emotional reasons. And
mm,
there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's like many of us are conditioned to do that, like
mm,
you said. And so it's just about, understanding, what
mm,
are those feelings? There's
mm,
nothing wrong with having those emotions. And I can, teach myself to understand what these emotions are, what they're here to
mm,
tell me.
mm,
And I can actually feel a lot of lightness,
mm,
not just physical lightness, but mental lightness, and being able to work through those feelings without eating.
mm. Beautiful, beautiful. And there are certain tricks that we can actually use. So whilst we've talked a lot about the tricks that the money-making food industry out there is using to feed us trash, there are many tricks that we can use to actually figure that out and figure ways out of a life that suits us better. Take the plate size. The plate size in the United States has increased by 25% in one generation, two generations.
Hmm.
So here you are. If you're used to, oh, you have to eat your plate. Well, if your plate is suddenly 25% more, well, guess what will happen? So maybe just reducing your plate size and maybe just valuing what you've got, that it's not quantity but quality that matters.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
that's one thing that comes to my mind. Are there other tricks that you sort of utilize to help people develop a new sense or a new relationship with food?
Well, you just touched on it briefly in terms of quality. I mean, really prioritizing high quality
Mm,
ingredients. And that
mm,
doesn't necessarily mean they have to be fancy or expensive
no,
ingredients, but
exactly.
really the best quality produce that you can find, or
Mm,
even eating things in season, or eating things that are sourced as close, that are purchased as close to their source, dramatically improves the flavor. And in order to
mm,
be satisfied with less,
mm,
eating higher quality foods, eating more whole
mm.
foods makes a big difference, right?
Oh
Because if
yeah.
you're eating something that just has a bunch of chemicals, you're not going to feel as satisfied with a couple bites. And you're just going to be eating more, kind of waiting, waiting for that pleasure to accumulate and waiting, for some kind of satisfaction that's not there. And so I think that I don't know that it's a trick, but that's something that I really help people focus on is, how can you choose a couple of high quality ingredients to sort of elevate some simple meals? Doesn't have to take a lot of time. You don't have to put a huge effort into it if you don't enjoy cooking, but you can really experience so much more pleasure in eating.
Mm.
Now, the other thing is not being distracted while you eat. And this isn't really a trick, but it's something that takes effort for a lot of people, given our busyness, is that you have to put the phone down. You have to turn the TV off, at least as you're developing new
Yeah,
habits, so that
correct.
when you're taking a bite, you're bringing all five senses
Nice.
to the eating experience so
Yeah.
that, when you're looking at the food, you're just really delighting in how beautiful it is in the colors,
Mm.
or you're just noticing it. When you're eating it, you're noticing the texture, right? There's a lot of pleasure in the texture, in the temperature, in the smell of it, right? If you are undistracted, there is so much pleasure to be had without eating as much.
Wow.
It's not complicated. It's just that you have to be willing to set aside the time to do this. So that's one. As people are getting used to kind of their ideal satiety point and really challenging how much food they actually need to eat, right? No longer using the plate size as the indicator of how much food they're going to eat. I mean, one thing I just tell people is just serve yourself a little bit less in the beginning. So if you put a little bit less on your plate and then you finish the whole plate, you're still eating less. And then you can notice how you feel differently. It's like, oh, like I feel pretty good and I don't need any more. And a little thing that you might want to tell yourself as you're serving yourself less and your brain is saying like, oh, just a little bit more, right? If it's one of your favorite foods, you might be tempted like, oh, one more spoonful. Is just notice that sort of restless urge for more, but then just remind yourself, I probably need less than I think. Most people need a lot less food to be at their just ideal size and to feel their best than they think, because we're so distorted by what we get in restaurants and like the plate
Yes.
sizes and how much,
Yes.
visually we're used to eating. So
Mm.
if you can just remind yourself, I probably need less than what I think,
Mm.
serve yourself a little bit less. And if there is still hunger there and you're like, I am still hungry, I still feel
Mm.
emptiness and it's true hunger,
Mm.
give yourself a little bit more.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
100% agreed. I think the other thing that I constantly get surprised with is if you really look into the food a bit closer and don't accept it. Oh yeah, that's nice. And there's somewhere a health tick on there, and there's a bit of green grass being displayed on the front of the packaging, and you think, oh, it must be good for you. When you actually look these things up, there are many good programs out there that allow you to just scan the barcode and you actually get there and then the exact amount of calories, of fat, of carbohydrates, etc. in there. And you sometimes get surprises. You know that yummy cheesecake that you think, ooh, I could eat that whole cheesecake. Congratulations, that's 5,000 calories. And you think, damn, I could have eaten at least half of that. So that's your whole daily food requirement, calorie requirement, and then some. And it's just good to actually see what really is in something. You get a lot of interesting surprises, sometimes very
Yes.
positive surprises. And I use that as a tool to teach myself. And I recently, I'm going through a hard time. So, of course, that cheesecake looked quite tempting to me. So, luckily, I was already in the evening, was already half undressed, and I got dressed again to go to town to get this cheesecake. And I actually looked it up, and I thought, actually, no. And that was just such a beautiful thing to hold myself accountable. Check first. And, there are other ways to get that pleasure. If someone is really a sweet tooth, what tactics do you employ with yourself? You were the girl who was going for the creating these beautiful desserts. what can we do instead that is maybe a bit healthier?
Well, I mean, my philosophy is you don't have to get rid of the things that you love. Like I don't teach people to just take certain things off the list of what they can eat because I don't think it's a question of the food. I don't think the food's the problem. I think it's really the habit of mindless eating that creates the problem. And when
Nice,
we're doing it unconsciously,
nice,
not only do we not enjoy the food as much, but we end up eating more of it. So
nice.
the approach that I often recommend with my clients, if it's like that they want to, lose weight or if they want to
Mm,
drink less, it's like, great, let's just be very intentional when you plan a
mm,
dessert.
mm,
It's not going to be every single day. It's not going to be a couple times a day if you're trying to lose weight,
mm,
but maybe it's like twice a week. And when you do that,
mm.
you're also deciding what is it that you really love. You're not just having some random, packaged brownie that your kids are eating because you're giving into
Nice,
an urge, which is not
nice.
going to be as sasatisfying. You're maybe planning like the delicious chocolate torte that you know is your
Mm,
favorite that will be highly flavorful, and you're creating, a plan to have it on a certain date, exactly
nice,
what the portion is, and you're going to eat it
nice,
without distractions. And
nice.
you're not going to feel deprived and you're not going to, overeat because you're doing it from a place of intentionality
Mm,
instead of out of
nice,
urgency.
nice.
And then you're going to feel confident on the
Yeah,
other side because you still feel good and you're still losing weight.
nice.
So that's how I personally approach it is
Love it.
that I certainly like don't eat a ton of sugar every day because I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like
Mm,
dealing with a lot of cravings, but I do like to eat sweet stuff. So I will
mm,
a couple times a week decide on something delicious. If it's
mm,
like a creme brulee or if it's, a piece of chocolate, I make sure it's something that I really love.
mm.
And then I make sure that I'm eating it with all of my senses so that I'm
Beautiful,
thoroughly enjoying it. And
beautiful.
so I think that is such a more sustainable approach. I think that it's a more enjoyable approach. And in
Mm,
my opinion, that's how you really get the best of both worlds. You can enjoy food, good food, like you can enjoy the pasta. Like you don't have to
mm,
give the pasta up.
mm,
And it's just like being, very intentional about when you have it and
mm,
balancing it with an
mm,
approach of primarily eating whole foods that are
mm,
going to help your body feel better, help you maintain your ideal size, and
mm,
actually also help you just appreciate the flavor in some of these
mm.
other foods even more.
Absolutely.
So,
Ah, beautiful,
yeah.
beautifully said. And I mean, that's exactly how I live my life nowadays. It's so easy to go for a diet, the quick fix that you have said, and of course the gazillions that at the moment the certain pharma industries make with the use of new drugs that originally were used for diabetes, and now it shows that they are actually quite helping when it comes to weight loss. Um, if you look what they are doing, these drugs, how the mechanisms that they work on glucose receptors, but also, for example, they paralyze your stomach. So therefore,
Mhm.
it's not particularly great for nutrition if everything is just sitting there. Number one, but number two is so if you realize actually why certain drugs work, then you can also say, well, okay, maybe there are other ways that I can utilize to actually have a maybe similar outcome without using or relying on medications. Because the problem with medications, the quick fixes, guess what? After 3 months, you stop, and then what happens? And you go
Mhm.
back to where
Mhm.
you were, or worse. I think that is
Mhm.
that is one of the predictions that a lot of people out there are making when it comes to
Mhm.
this wave of whatever trucks they are. I don't want to mention any now to not get into trouble there, but ultimately, by actually having a food plan, not a diet, but actually living with a healthy relationship with food, um,
Yes.
then I think that is what you are all about, and that is such a
Mhm.
beautiful message to hear. Um,
Mhm.
Personally, I love the Mediterranean food plan. So lots of veggies, lots of salads, eating the rainbow, having healthy food, maybe the chicken and the fish more than the very rich beef or things like that. I love the points of intentionality, which starts with where you're sourcing your food. And I think that
Mhm.
is so beautiful if you develop a relationship with your local farmers market, or suppliers there. That
Mhm.
again, you're starting a relationship with food that starts well before the plate, but with you actually taking control of your life, showing
Mhm.
leadership, and that is
Yes.
beautiful, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
100%.
And you have written a book. And so hopefully this is
Yes, I
all
have.
this information is there. There we go. Decoding Your Emotional Appetite. Now, if there couldn't be
Yes.
a better title for that, the emotional appetite is so much behind that. Oh, I can't wait. When is this book coming out?
It is coming out April 2nd. It's available for pre-order now.
Nice.
And I just, my goal in writing this book was really to make this information available to more and more people.
Beautiful.
And it really is a description of my personal journey of losing weight, drinking less, and really healing my relationship with food and alcohol.
Mm,
And then it also gives a lot of stories about the experience my clients have gone through, as well as I just talk about a lot of the concepts that I teach inside of my program. So it's not a diet book, but it does help you
mm,
really regain a sense of control
mm,
around eating and in a way that you can really enjoy food even
mm,
more and feel better than probably you ever had. So I'm
mm.
excited for people to dig into this and be able to sort of learn this work the way that I did.
Oh, brilliant, Molly. Thank you so much for creating such a wonderful resource, because it's that intentionality, um, living the moment and really experiencing the moment with all our five senses. Uh,
Yes.
that is such a beautiful thing when it comes to food. And then maybe we can
Mhm.
also use that same thing when it comes maybe to relationships, maybe
Mhm.
to the way we feel after a workout, or after simply a walk in the forest, using our five senses to just and looking inside, seeing what the feelings are that we have got, and chances are the more you do it, the easier it will get for you, and the richer your life will be. There's very little doubt in my mind, and I use that as much as possible. There are times when you want to just forget everything. There are times for your social media. There are times for YouTube. That's all cool. But there are many other times when I feel I'm missing out if I'm not living that intentional life. So thank you
Yes.
so much for helping us to go down this route. And if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, mollyzemek.com. I also have a podcast that comes out every week that's called Weight Loss for Food Lovers. And those are the two best places. So I encourage people to, I've got a lot of free trainings on my
Mm,
site, a lot of great information on the podcast. So those would be two avenues. And then on
yes.
Instagram at Molly Zemek.
Beautiful. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. All her links are down there. Whilst you're down there, please press the like and subscribe button, because that helps us to grow this show, and helps me to bring more fantastic guests like Molly onto my show. And the more we can spread the word, um, that life is beautiful, and that we are not victims, and that we are not just corks in the ocean bobbing around, but that we actually can put a rudder on it, and actually direct our life towards living a more meaningful life, and being more intentional humans. I bet we can change first us, and then we can change this world. I
Mm.
strongly believe that. And that's why Molly is doing all that beautiful work. So check her out, go over there. But first, like and subscribe, and maybe tell a friend, hey, this was cool. Molly Zemek, good. Molly, you're an amazing woman. Thank you very, very much for being a guest on my show. It was an honor.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it was just a pleasure to be here with you and your listeners.
Fantastic. And you guys out there, live with passion and look after yourself. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. turn around.